Section 1. The Foundations of Wisdom. Christian Objectivism as Observed in Nature. From Jonathan. Reason is man's only means of knowledge. The starting point of all of your knowledge is the recognition that something exists. You see the world around you. This is the axiom of existence. Existence exists. Next, you recognize that things are what they are. A thing is itself. This is the axiom of identity. And then you become aware of your own awareness. This is the axiom of consciousness. These three axioms, existence, identity, and consciousness, are the foundation for everything you know, woven into every moment of your awareness. They are inescapable. All arguments attempting to refute them rely on them. The three axioms are not the first things you identify. They are the foundation beneath all identification. You do not grasp identity as an abstract axiom first. What you grasp are the things you perceive. Your first conceptual distinction is likely tactile, the experience of touch. Something is there. From there, your mind begins dividing and categorizing. It recognizes that the sensation of touch is not the same as the internal sense of your own body, proprioception. Your first concepts form as you differentiate between types of sensory input. Before you can name identity, you are applying it, by recognizing that different sensations are not the same. This is the genesis of reason. You aren't just passive in your perception of the world. You can focus your thoughts or you can drift. You can choose to think or avoid thinking. This capacity to direct your attention is called volition. You know you have it. You can feel yourself choosing to concentrate or choosing to let go. Try denying you have a choice. In order to do so, you need to make a choice. You make choices constantly, even in reading this. If you couldn't choose, then reasoning with you would be pointless. You wouldn't be able to weigh ideas or change your mind. Your ability to understand or to be persuaded proves you have volition. Every day you act by choice, pursuing the things you want, your values. A value is something you act to gain or keep. Why do you pursue anything at all? Because your life depends on it. You face a fundamental choice, life or death. Everything you do to sustain yourself is part of choosing life. That choice, to live, is the root of all your values. Life is the standard for judging what is good or bad. Nothing is inherently good or bad. Something is good if it supports your life, and bad if it harms you. You know this from your own experience. If you're dying of thirst, you'd value water over diamonds. Neither the water nor the diamond changed. Your needs did. You want a countless number of things, but your time, energy, and attention are limited, so you must choose. In choosing, you rank your values. You decide this is more important than that, and you decide which you want right now. You might want to relax, but you're late for work. Or you enjoy another episode of a show, but by the third, you're bored. Your priorities shift with your circumstances. You know that things gain or lose value based on your knowledge. Oil, once a nuisance, became valuable when its uses were discovered. Tobacco gained value when it was found pleasurable, then lost value when its dangers became known. The thing itself didn't change. Your knowledge did. Your values change based on your understanding and how you think each value serves your life. You alone choose your values. No one else can do it for you. Group values are a myth. Each person's context is unique. And giving up your life to obtain a value is a contradiction. Once you're dead, nothing matters. There are no values if there isn't a valuer. To choose your values wisely, you must harness your mind's capacity to think and understand reality. You're a rational being. You live by thinking. You observe the world and form concepts by grouping similar things and omitting their specific measurements. You don't need to recall every dog you've seen to know what dog is. You abstract the essentials to form the concept. Definitions draw boundaries between concepts. highlighting traits that set one group of things apart from another. As your knowledge grows, definitions may evolve, but the concepts they describe stay the same. You might define man as the rational animal, but if you encountered rational beings from another planet, you'd refine your definition, perhaps rational animal from Earth, to reflect deeper understanding. Forming and integrating concepts is essential to rational thought. It gives you the power to compress vast knowledge into precise words, which link ideas together. Logic tethers those links to reality by identifying contradictions. Signs your thinking has gone astray. Reality never contradicts itself. If your thoughts do, they are not aligned with the world. The structure of reason isn't speculation. It's observable. In 2013, Thomas Mikolov et al. Showed that word relationships can be learned and represented in high-dimensional vector space. In their paper, Efficient Estimation of Word Representations in Vector Space, they demonstrated how machines can discover and encode meaning geometrically in a hyperspace. For example, in Table 8 of the paper, their model identified word pair relationships like these. Athens to Greece is like Oslo to Norway. This vector encodes the concept capital cities. Einstein to scientist is Mozart to violinist. This vector encodes the concept occupations. Windows to Microsoft is Android to Google. This vector encodes the concept operating systems. Pizza to Italy is like sushi to Japan. This vector encodes the concept cultural cuisine. These aren't random connections. They reflect a logical, hierarchical structure of knowledge. Ayn Rand defined logic as the method of organizing concepts without contradiction, grounded in reality. A machine learning these relationships proves they're objective. They exist in reality. Logic isn't optional. It's how you apply identity to thought. Reason keeps you connected to reality. It's how you know anything. It's how you form concepts, choose values, and guide your life. To live well, you must think, honestly, independently, and without contradiction. You can't surrender your mind to the collective. That's not humility. That is moral suicide. For centuries, philosophers have tried to sever reason from morality, with David Hume as their ringleader. He claimed you can't derive an ought from an is, that facts alone can't lead to moral conclusions. But look at your life. You face the fundamental choice, life or death. That fact drives the need for choice, values, and morality. You reason from facts to values every day, when you choose to eat, to protect your health, to love your children, to create. Hume was wrong. He lied. And every philosophy that followed him grew from that lie. Immanuel Kant believed Hume and tried to salvage morality by separating it from reality. He replaced reason with duty. He divorced the mind from the world, and that was the beginning of the modern disaster. Kant became the trunk that carried Hume's poison into the modern age. And from that poisoned trunk grew the branches of collectivism and nihilism, Marxism, fascism, communism, socialism, postmodernism, standpoint theory, presuppositional apologetics, and Van Tillian philosophy. They all deny your mind and your right to live by your own judgment. They all claim that morality is either unknowable or dictated by the group. And if you let them, they'll utterly destroy you. You must not let the group dictate what's right. You must not surrender your mind. You must not destroy yourself for morality's sake. You must think. You must observe. You must reason. You must live by the judgment of your own mind. This is not just a suggestion. It is your moral obligation, your only path to life. Because existence exists, there must be a metaphysical primary. Could that primary be the material universe itself? If the primary were material, the universe would have to be eternal. However, if time stretches infinitely backward, why do you exist now? Your existence at this specific moment on an infinite timeline is impossible. Do you really believe there were an infinite number of Big Bangs, an infinite number of universes, each ending in a big crunch until our current eon where it will all end in a big whimper? This would mean believing there were an infinite number of universes before us, yet an infinite void after us, since space-time is flat. We are not at the tail end of infinity. We exist in a chosen moment, and something chose it. Therefore, the primary is volitional. When the universe began, it is clear that nature changed, and the only thing that can change a nature is volition. If it is volitional, it is conscious. If it is conscious, it is rational. A rational consciousness acts according to its values. It must be moral. All moral agents are ends to themselves. Therefore, it must hold itself as its highest value. The primary must be good, because good is that which supports life. Evil destroys life. If the primary were evil, it would have self-destructed. But it didn't. You exist. So the primary must be perfectly good, free of contradiction, flawless, without corruption. A primary can't create another primary. That's a contradiction. There can only be one head. Two heads would clash, revealing one is false. The primary can't create a world and then abandon it. That would mean it exists apart from its source, which is impossible. There is no deism. There is no polytheism. There is only one primary. As the source of all things, the primary must have all knowledge. If there were knowledge apart from the primary, what created that knowledge? There is no second source. All knowledge must come from the primary. And because the primary is perfect, it must know itself perfectly. Any ignorance would cause a contradiction, and contradiction leads to death. Now imagine the primary reflecting on itself, having perfect knowledge and therefore perfect memory. As it considers itself, it would experience itself again, fully, vividly, eternally. Its self-knowledge forms a perfect mirror, not a lesser copy, but the primary itself again, distinct yet identical in essence. This reveals the primary's structure, the primary source, the primary reflection. The source is the origin, the foundation of all being. The reflection is the perfect co-eternal image of the source. Being moral, the source would judge himself by examining his reflection. This judgment is the primary emotion. And the emotion, what is it? Not merely a feeling, but rather the totality of judgment. It's the primary's full knowledge judging itself in all things, the complete sum of the good. These judgments aren't partial, they're perfect. And since emotions are judgments in motion, motivations toward action, this primary emotion is the perfect action of the primary toward all value. The primary emotion is the primary itself. To judge perfectly, one must possess all knowledge. The primary emotion must know all that the source and the reflection know. It must be that knowledge again, but expressed as moral valuation and animated force. The primary emotion isn't loved by the source or reflection, nor does it love in return. It's love itself. The source and the reflection love each other, but they do not love the emotion. They act through the emotion, the embodiment of love. The primary emotion moves, animates, motivates. It's how the primary causes anything to happen, turning will into action. This is the Spirit. It's not separate from God. It's the motion of God. It's the judgment of God at work in the world. To seek the Spirit means seeking the judgments of God. To align with the Spirit means aligning with the primary's rational, moral evaluations. This is the God who thinks, values, judges, and acts. The triune God is the only primary compatible with logic, life, morality, and existence. Romans 1:20 says, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." From what exists, we can reason to the existence of the Godhead. From creation, we can deduce the three in one. Now that we have deduced the Trinity, we confirm it with the testimony of Scripture. The Word was with God and was God. John 1:1-3. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact imprint of his nature. Hebrews 1:3. By him all things were created and are held together. Colossians 1:15-17. The Spirit knows the thoughts of God. 1 Corinthians 2:11. Wisdom is personified as pre-existent, active in creation. Proverbs 8. Next, let us walk through Romans 1:29 through 31 to show that every moral demand is consistent with rational, life-affirming reasoning. Hume was wrong. We can reason to morality. Immoral men are against life, and their unrighteousness destroys value and leads to death. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. Malice and covetousness erode trust and cripple a society steeped in theft and fraud. Covetousness lusts for what others possess, desiring unjust gain from the loss of another. Translations after Immanuel Kant obscure this truth, as Psalm 119:36 and 1 Corinthians 6:9 through 10 shifted from covetousness to selfish or greedy, conflating honest gain with unjust craving. This linguistic perversion intentionally muddies the moral clarity the primary demands, veiling the vice he condemns. The covetous, seeking unjust gain, undermine production and cooperation, while the greedy are driven to seek greater value through honest efforts. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. Envy destroys the soul. It leads to sabotage, not success. Murder ends life, the root of all value. Strife depletes energy that could be used to create. Deceit blinds you and others to reality. Malice is hatred of the good for being good. It seeks the destruction of value for its own sake. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful. Gossip and slander erode reputation with lies. God-haters deny the primary, severing themselves from truth. Insolence and arrogance blind one to feedback and learning. Boasting distorts the measure of true value. They are inventors of evil, disobedient to parents. Disobeying your parents is rebelling against those who gave you life. If you throw away your parents when you are 30, you have taught your children how to treat you when you are 60. You become the living argument for your own abandonment. They are foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Foolishness rejects reason, chasing illusions over reality with no grasp of consequences. Faithlessness breaks trust, shattering the bonds that sustain cooperation and love. Heartlessness snuffs out empathy, treating others as mere tools, not beings of value. Ruthlessness pursues gain at any cost, crushing life without remorse. These traits dismantle the foundation of a life-affirming society, defying the primary's call to reason, fidelity, and care. Since they all lead to destruction, each of these behaviors ruins the possibility of value creation. You must choose, create or destroy value. This is why you must act justly. Mercy isn't the suspension of justice. It's the rational preservation of potential value. The primary is an investor. He creates in order to receive a return. He expects growth. His judgments are absolute, perfect, without contradiction. But he also values friendship. Man is a rational creature like him, and he wants companions who love what he loves and hates what he hates. That is the definition of a friend. Someone who loves what you hate and hates what you love is not a friend. The primary is looking for those who are like him in judgment. Rand described justice as the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake the character of men as you cannot fake the character of nature. Every man must be judged for what he is and treated accordingly. From For the New Intellectual, page 144. The primary judges justly, but justice alone cannot bring about friendship. He must have mercy, not arbitrary or unjust, but upholding his value. If all of his creation must be destroyed for imperfection, then the objects he created to be valued would cease to exist. Thus, he offers mercy to preserve what he values, and that mercy must satisfy justice. You can reason the cross is no contradiction. It's the ultimate integration of justice and mercy. It's a perfect primary's justice and a perfect friend's mercy, driven by the expected return on his investment, obtained by the purchaser. What the cross shows you is that you are an investment. You must become a return on investment, or your nature is not that of an investment. Now, what are the practical implications of these truths? The primary believes in reason, in truth, and in value. That means he must believe all that logically flows from the axioms. Anything deduced from the axioms is what the primary believes, because he's without contradiction and unable to deny himself. So, when you reason rightly from existence, identity, and consciousness, you're reasoning God's thoughts after him. To coerce another mind is to deny the image of the primary in them. Man's mind reflects God, making coercion the greatest offense to the primary. It's to make oneself an enemy of the image of God. Think about taxation. Taxation is theft, taking another's property by force without voluntary exchange. Property is the result of thought and labor, products of a rational mind. To forcibly seize the fruits of a mind is to violate that mind. Since man's mind is what makes him like the primary, coercion against his property is an assault on the image of God. The primary, who is rational and values rational beings, must hate taxation as theft. The same is true of fraud. Fraud is the pretense of value, mimicking trade while eroding the trust it depends on. It deceives and exploits rational consciousness. The primary, who cannot lie and who hates contradictions, must hate fraud as an abomination. He hates false business records and false weights and measures. Why? Because they lie about reality. They destroy just exchange, swapping illusion for truth and distortion for integrity. The primary demands fair scales, not as a ritual, but as the application of the moral law of non-contradiction. A false measure is a lie built into matter. Coercion isn't just force. It's force directed against the mind, aiming to override judgment. The primary created man as a rational being in his own image. Coercing man treats God's image as animal, reason as noise, and judgment as obsolete. The ultimate affront to the primary. Coercion is anti-Christ. Therefore, what anarcho-capitalists call evil, taxation, regulation, fraud, counterfeit, inflation, aggression, coercion, it isn't merely economically inefficient. It's morally condemned by the primary himself. The free market is not a secular ideal. It's a sacred necessity. Only in freedom does man's mind flourish. Only in voluntary trade does man live as the image of the triune God. Anarcho-capitalism is based on the notion that law and order should be derived from natural law, rather than imposed by a human head. The term anarchy literally means no head, a declaration that no man possesses a legitimate claim over another's life. Anarchy does not mean chaos or men without bombs. It simply rejects the idea of a human king. Rioting is a prime example of statism in action, the belief that one has the right to dispose of others' property at will. Violent rioting, coercive taxation, and government regulation are identical in their underlying philosophy, that some men possess headship over others. Ultimately, law and order can only truly exist in the absence of coercion by violent men. The primary is a value creator. He loves value. He loves minds that create, build, reason, and act. He judges with justice because he is perfect. But he extends mercy because he wants to create value in you. And he made you for friendship with him. Friendship requires shared values. He seeks those who love what he loves and hates what he hates. This is Christian objectivism. This is reason in full bloom. This is the mind aligned with truth. Bitcoin reflects the primary's character. It lets your yes be yes and your no be no. It's governed by unchangeable rules, requiring universal consent. If someone proposes to change the block reward, no one can force your agreement. You can dissent, and while you may lose the support of the collective hash rate, No one can coerce you. Bitcoin is voluntary, freely associating, freely dissenting, embodying the primary's nature. Bitcoin is anarcho-capitalism. The primary reflection has said, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than this is from the evil one." Matthew 5:37. Therefore, non-coercive systems, fixed rules, and honest adjudication align with the primary's values. These are values because they are good for man's life. Bitcoin mirrors the primary's attributes, pleasing him and making him happy. See and consider how his laws are good for our life. His laws are what make this letter immutable. Now consider man. Man is the only creature observed to act against his own nature. Fish don't willfully drown. A tree can't willfully uproot itself. But man can choose what destroys him. This is a contradiction. Where can there be contradiction in nature? A contradiction is evidence that something has been corrupted. Something is radically wrong with man. Man has no unchosen duties, save one, man's duty to choose life. It is a contradiction to choose death. Since man is rational, living by reason, choosing death abandons your nature. It is to become a beast. The corruption of our nature began in Eden. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was a poisoned tree. The primary, the creator of the tree, told Eve plainly, "Eat of it and you will die." She had the rational duty to choose life. Then came the contradictor, the anti-primary, the liar. He told Eve that eating the fruit of the tree would make her like the primary, a lie sowing contradiction. Eve chose to believe the lie. Eve's error was not epistemological, it was moral. Becoming like the primary is a high value, but to place any value above your own life is to breach morality. Eve chose death to gain wisdom. She lost her faculty of value. She ceased to be like the primary. Adam followed the lie, choosing Eve over his own life. He valued her above the one thing that made valuing possible. It was a failure of moral priority. This is man's consistent failure. It is always moral before it is intellectual. Life and death are always the choice. As it says, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life." Deuteronomy 30:19. All who hate reason love death. Proverbs 8:36. Thus says the Lord, "Behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death." Jeremiah 21:8. Repent from all your transgressions, for why should you die? Therefore, turn and live. Ezekiel 18:30-32. Enter by the narrow gate, which leads to life. Matthew 7:13-14. The book of 1 John is the book of Christian objectivism. 1 John 1 declares that anyone who denies sense perception is of the contradictor. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at and our hands have touched. To deny your senses is to deny the axiom of consciousness. It is to commit metaphysical treason. When 1 John 4 speaks of the emotions of the primary reflection, calling them love, it is not mysticism. It is objectivism. It is the perfect, positive valuation of reality. These emotions are not sentimentalism, they're objective judgments. They are the primary's motivational conclusions based on complete knowledge. The spirit of the primary is contrasted with the spirit of the contradictor. One affirms existence, identity, and consciousness. The other denies them. One is grounded in reality. The other invents fantasy. One leads to life. The other leads to death. This is Christian objectivism. This is truth. Reason is man's only means of knowledge and his method of mapping all that exists. This is the voice of the primary. The primary is Jesus Christ. The primary source is the Father. The primary reflection is the Son, and the primary emotion is the Spirit. He is the one God in three persons, perfectly unified, without contradiction. He is the source, the knowledge, and the action. The contradictor, Satan, the liar, the father of lies, speaks against reality and destroys identity. To worship is to ascribe value. When you speak truth, you speak the primary's language. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6. Truth is the native tongue of Jesus. To speak truth is to worship him. To speak lies, however, is to speak the contradictor's language. Jesus said of Satan, when he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. John 8:44. Lies worship the contradictor. The contradictor's goal is always death. He has been condemned to death and therefore envies life. He is the father of envy, and his hatred for the good drives him to shatter value. This is why he targeted Eve, God's rational image-bearer. He wanted her to choose death, and in so doing, destroy her value. Satan takes many names. His character stays fixed. In ancient Israel, he was Baal. Scripture identifies Beelzebub, Ekron's god, as a false deity opposed to the God of Israel. 2 Kings 1:1-3. Jesus names Beelzebul as Satan himself. Matthew 10:24-25, Mark 3:22-30, and Matthew 12:24-32. Islamic historical sources confirm that before Muhammad, the god Hubal was the chief deity of the Kaaba. Scholars such as Malise Ruthven, Fred Donner, and John Mullisin Arnold confirm that Hubal was a moon god associated with Baal, imported from Syria. Pre-Islamic Arabs worshipped Hubal, Kaaba's chief god, casting lots and offering sacrifices to his idol. Muhammad's grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, made vows to Allah before the idol of Hubal, evidence they were seen as the same deity. Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Kathir record that blood sacrifices and divination were offered at Hubal's shrine. Hubal was Baal. Baal was Satan. The deity worshipped as Allah in the Kaaba was none other than the ancient enemy of God, the contradictor. Islam isn't a continuation of Abraham's faith. It's a rebranding of Baal worship. The Quran's Allah is the Satan of the Scriptures, the god of coercion, deceit, legalism, and death. The primary, Jesus Christ, is not coercive. He is reason, freedom, joy, and life. He invites you to choose. The contradictor demands, accuses, punishes, deceives, molests. He commands worship by means of fear. But the primary speaks plainly. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Everything else comes from the evil one. Matthew 5:37. You must choose your primary. There is no neutrality, no middle ground. There are only two fathers. The father of truth versus the father of lies. The father who so loved the world versus Allah. With only two fathers, by deduction, George Bush, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile false prophet Muhammad, and Paula White all worship Allah, because liars speak their father's language. Deceived, they were ignorant of their God's true nature. Deuteronomy 32:17. Allah, the deceiver. All who do not worship Jesus Christ worship Allah. This is Christian objectivism. This is war between truth and lies, between life and death, between the primary and the contradictor. Who will you worship? The Father of Jesus Christ bought his children with a price. We are his investment. Our value to him lies in becoming his image, to love what he loves and hate what he hates. We must hate coercion, taxation, theft, murder, envy, covetousness, and slothfulness in all forms. We must hate the violation of property rights. If we don't do this, what value are we to him? Intrinsic value is a heresy, a lie created by Allah. Karl Menger proved value is derived, contextual, and ordinal. You forgot that Abimelech was a worthless son, a disvalue to his entire family. If you believe you're valuable to the Father simply because you're a son, you've been deceived by Allah. You are clay, meant to be molded. If you're not moldable, you'll serve common purposes, then be destroyed. Bought at a great cost, we are the Father's investment, and he expects a great return. He expects us to grow in value as he forms us into a bride worthy of the Son. He is making us to be his perfect wife. In that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, and you will no longer call me my master. Hosea 2:16. Allah demands, my master, but Jesus Christ made us his wife, to call him my husband. This is the joy that was set before him, a perfect bride, a perfect friend, a companion who shares his judgments and his values. Sanctification is not about ritual. It is about alignment. It is the process of becoming a person who loves what the primary loves and hates what he hates. It is transformation through judgment, continually conforming to the truth. The Father is a capitalist. Jesus taught in the parable of the talents that the one who buried his investment was condemned, and the one who multiplied it was praised. Matthew 25:14-30. God is not pleased with wasted potential. He wants producers, stewards who create value from what he has given them. He hates waste and laziness. He hates the short-sighted, high time preference of promiscuity. Each act discards yesterday's potential, choosing consumption over investment, building nothing and yielding no return. God is forming a wife, not a harlot. A harlot seeks pleasure with no cost, no commitment, and no ultimate value. But a wife gives a return on investment. The bride is sanctified by steady growth, building, enduring, compounding. We're not merely clay. We're vessels shaped for a purpose. Some are for honor, some are for dishonor. Romans 9:21 declares, does not the potter have power over the clay, from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor? The Father is shaping you into a vessel for honor, but you must yield. Allow yourself to be molded. He wants to make you into a perfect reflection of his value, a vessel that reveals his wonders. But if, while you are still a lump, you harden, and if, while being shaped, you crack and cannot be reformed, what good are you? Are you not to be thrown away? But do not say that it was the primary that cracked you. You hardened your own heart. You would not be shaped. You resisted judgment, fled correction, rejected knowledge. You are fit to be discarded. My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priests. Because you have ignored the law of your God, because you have ignored the law of your God, I also will ignore your children. Hosea 4:6. The warning was clear. The primary was patient. But he did not form vessels to be unyielding. You were meant to soften, to remain teachable. You were meant to seek his judgments, to hunger for truth. But if you did not, your ruin was not on him. It was on you. It had been your choice. No one else could have made it for you. You were an individual, responsible. You could not blame the collective, your upbringing, the state, or your peers. The failure to yield was yours alone. The rejection of knowledge was yours. The consequence was yours. That is the essence of individualism, the moral responsibility of choice. Rejecting individualism, you joined the Church of Allah, a counterfeit holy, a temple of coercion and decay. You were the falling away Paul wrote about in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. Read the full letter at bit.ly/10 July final.